The second Democratic primary debate was the last chance for many candidates to make an impact on voters before the qualifications for the next debates forced many of them out of the race. And for those already qualified, it was a time to make a strong impression and prove why you should still be seen as an upper tier candidate. So let's talk about who succeeded and who failed in these endeavors. Hello there, everybody. It is a beautiful day here in America. Welcome back to the campaign trail. My name is Jared, and today I'm going to pick 3 candidates from each night who I thought made the best of the debates, and 3 candidates from each night who fell flat in their goals for the debate. Keep in mind that this is mostly my opinion when it comes to how they perform, but I do think about whether or not their performance will actually help where their campaign stands. With all that being said, let's get started with Night 1, specifically the Night 1 winners. Night 1, in my opinion, was one of the best debates that we've had in a long time. It was very policy-oriented and showed that the policy goals of people in the Democratic Party are not as unified as some of the media wish it to present it as. Which is a good thing, by the way. The whole point of primaries is to iron out the differences between different factions of the parties in order to come to a consensus on who can best represent the party as a whole. Overall, for this night, I don't think anybody here had a truly bad night. Everyone held their ground pretty well, and nobody got hammered. But there were people who were not as successful, and I'll get to them in a moment. But let's start off on a positive note and talk about who I think won the night. The first winner of the first night is the one candidate who hadn't had any time on the debate stage before this, and that is Governor from Montana, Steve Bullock. Bullock surprised a lot of people by taking advantage of his time on stage to really make himself stand out. He was the first of the moderate candidates to take a swing at Warren and Sanders, and from then on, he was a lead man on almost every attack on them. But he didn't just attack other candidates. He showed an alternative route for Democrats to take into 2020. He showed that Democrats could take a more moderate approach and focus on winning over voters that have felt left behind by the Democratic Party and not on policies he says are very unpopular. Like I said, Bullock made the best of his first debate performance and I think stands to gain a lot, especially should Biden falter down the road. The next candidate who I think did very well is another moderate on the stage, and that is former Representative from Maryland, John Delaney. Delaney, in some ways, was the brains behind the moderate attack on the progressives. Delaney clearly came into the debate with a detailed knowledge of not only his own plans, but the plans of his opponents. He was able to point out specifics in others' plans that made them, in his mind, impossible to pass. He also used his experience as a businessman and his involvement in some of the industries being discussed to bring a down-to-earth perspective that many felt was needed in these conversations, especially on healthcare. He kept Warren and Sanders on their heels most of the night, and unlike last time, doesn't feel like an afterthought. He was fully a part of many of the conversations, and for him, that's a huge win. If Delaney does get a boost from this debate, look for him to become a growing force in this primary. The last candidate who I think won the night is, and I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, Marianne Williamson. No, I'm not messing with you here. I legitimately think Williamson had one of the strongest debate performances of the night. Not that her answers were among the best thought out or that she took down any particular candidates, but she by far had the most applause time of the night. Williamson, from what I can see, represents the raw desire of the Democratic primary voters. She doesn't have plans, but she fights more on a spiritual and moral level. After the debate, Williamson was the most searched candidate on Google. For her, as well as Bullock and Delaney, will these performances be enough to get them in the next round of debates? We'll have to wait and see. Now we get to those who didn't quite have the wonderful night that they were looking for. Again, I don't think anybody here had a truly terrible night. It's just that these candidates had a less than impressive performances compared to others on the stage. The first loser of the night, in my opinion, was South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg was in a tough spot in this debate. When the debate became about moderates versus progressives, Buttigieg, who is not really affiliated with either faction, found himself caught in the center. He tried to do what I thought he should do, and that was bridge the gap between the two factions. However, hardly any of his answers to debate questions got responses from the other candidates, limiting his interaction between the other candidates. In the end, he felt like an afterthought, and considering that his support is already slowly slipping, it's not a great position to be in. The next candidate who I think had an unfortunate night is former Governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper. There were 4 moderates who routinely took on Sanders and Warren on their policies, and unfortunately for Hickenlooper, he was the least impressive among them. If a shift to these moderates does happen, Hickenlooper will be the least likely to benefit. For him, it's just that he's becoming crowded out in the moderate lane of the primary. Despite a good performance, there's little for him to benefit from it. The last candidate from Night 1 who I think had a rough night is former Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke. O'Rourke got hammered in the last debate, so he needed an especially strong performance this time around. He did do better, but like Buttigieg, he became an afterthought with most of his answers. To reverse his downward trend, O'Rourke needed a great performance, and his lack of flashy moments, as well as his desire not to engage with other candidates directly, kept him from getting it. Now let's move on to Night 2. Night 2 is a lot more like the first debate, where candidates were taking obvious swings at candidates themselves, not their policies, and more often than not, missing. However, there were a few who I think rose above the fray, the first of which was former Vice President Joe Biden. Biden's first debate performance was bad. He came off as slow and couldn't defend himself when attacked. This time, he still had some trouble when attacking other opponents and needed help from other candidates, but it was his defense that really allowed him to win. Props to Biden for knowing exactly what candidates would attack him on and being able to dispatch those attacks with relative ease. It was impressive, especially since it seemed like half the stage was gunning for him. Conventional wisdom is that Biden quote-unquote survived this debate, and while I agree, I think it's more than enough to consider him a winner of this round of debates. The next winner of Night 2 is Representative from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard is one of those candidates that was looking to get a boost from these debates, and I think she gets it from this one. From her calm and collected demeanor to her willingness to call out both sides for their faults, it's no wonder why she was the most Googled candidate for the entire round of debates. And let's not forget her total evisceration of Kamala Harris's prosecutorial record. That moment will mirror Harris's moment of the first debate, and will be more than enough to keep Gabbard in this race. The last winner of the second night to me was Andrew Yang. After being overwhelmed and quiet in the first debate, Yang found his groove here in the second round. Particularly, his opening and closing lines were very well received. He did a good job of bringing most issues back to his flagship issue of universal basic income without sounding like a broken record. All in all, Yang's very close to making the next round of debates, and I think this performance is more than enough to get him the support he needs for it. Now, finally, we move on to the losers of Night 2. The first loser of Night 2 was the senator from Colorado, Michael Bennet. By no means did Bennet have a bad debate performance. In fact, his answers were very well thought out and he didn't have any real bad moments. The problem for him comes in that he came off more as Joe Biden's sidekick than an actual candidate. Whenever Biden seemed to be having a hard time criticizing a policy, Bennet would swoop in and pick up where Biden left off. Unfortunately for Bennet, his performance became too tied with Biden's, and he did little to create his own identity. Before this debate, I thought Bennet would be a legit moderate challenge to Biden, but now he and his candidacy are living fully in Biden's shadow, and now there is no more opportunity to move out from under it. The next candidate who I think lost this debate was Senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand. I won't lie, I chose Gillibrand because she was the best representation of a certain group of candidates. This group also included Bill de Blasio and Jay Inslee. These were people who took swipes at other candidates all night but couldn't seem to land any kind of punch. I chose Gillibrand here because she had by far the worst moment of these three. When she tried to imply that Joe Biden didn't approve of women working outside the home, Biden smacked her with his record on helping women enter the workforce, as well as the fact that both of his wives worked outside the home. This moment added another example to a long list of Gillibrand being disingenuous in her candidacy, and has sunk any hope of her continuing on in this race. The last loser of Night 2 was by far the biggest. Senator from California Kamala Harris had an abysmal night. Immediately she fell flat in defending her healthcare proposal. When the issue of busing came up again, she came up with a reason why she criticized Biden for holding the same position as her that I don't think anybody bought. Again, let's not forget when Tulsi Gabbard took her to task for a laundry list of controversies she had as Attorney General of California. And then immediately afterwards, she didn't directly respond to any of the controversies, but instead decided to personally attack Gabbard as someone who just likes to make pretty speeches. And lastly, she continued the weakest, laziest, and most offensive trend in these debates so far, in that she took legitimate criticisms of her policies and dismissed them as Republican talking points, not actually rebuking the arguments made against her policies. I'm sorry, but this really ticks me off when these candidates do this. Not only do you not actually address criticisms with this, but you insinuate that criticisms against your policies are done only to benefit your political opponents, and that they should be dismissed because people from the other political party make the same criticisms. This is flatly bad for politics in America, and it needs to stop now. This was an asinine performance from Harris, and it made her lose all momentum she might have kept from the last debate. So with that, I've given you 3 winners and 3 losers from each night of the debates. Overall, I did enjoy these debates more than the first round, especially the first night. I think CNN did a great job forcing candidates to defend their policies and defend things they've said in the past. I want more debates like this. So what did you guys think? Who were the winners of each night? Who were the losers? Did you enjoy the debates or hate them? Let me know down in the comments. Remember, if you like what you see in here, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. With all that being said, my name is Jared, and I'll see you guys next time on the campaign trail.